One book that's changed your perspective on business itself. Can't be The Energy Bus.
Oh, come on now.
Throwing
Come
you a
on.
curveball.
You are throwing me a curveball.
Can't be The Energy Bus. Tell us about the other books, unless that's the only book you've ever read.
No, it's not the only. There's a couple different salesman books that I've read, and I'm just trying to think of the one that's...
What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to 5 with T5. We're being local business owners, community champions, and all around amazing individuals on to learn about them, their stories, their business in a quick and effective way. My name is Stephen Turnbull with T5 Insurance, your host, and I'm joined by our guest today, Mr. Bill Matteson, the co-founder of Upstate Wealth Consulting, the co-founder of the network.
Oh, here we
at
are.
600 French. You know how we're going to start it. First in-person one, but we're going to keep it the same. We're starting the clock with 5 rapid-fire questions. Mr. Matteson, you ready to rock?
Sure thing.
Number 1. Favorite local spot to unwind?
Favorite local spot to unwind is Nola's.
How'd I know?
Yeah.
I read you like a buck. Nola's.
Yes.
Gotta love it.
2 or 3 times a month.
2 or 3 times a month.
Yes.
Minimum.
Minimum.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
All right. Preference. Have to pick one.
Okay.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Why?
Just the caffeine.
Mm.
Caffeine. Yep.
I have a little bit of a coffee problem myself. That's okay. This is going to be hard for you.
Okay.
You have to describe yourself in one word.
Is energy, Bill? I mean, it's kind of a created word.
That's 2 words.
Okay.
Energy.
Energy.
Tell me about it.
It's always been important to me to show up with energy, and just about every part of my life, whether it's, hanging with the boys or sitting with clients, it's extremely important to me to just come in with a really good attitude and wake up, feet hit the ground, and energy pops.
The Energy Bus. A
Yeah.
favorite book of both of ours. I know we share that love. If anybody has not had The Energy Bus in their book lineup, you need to check that out. John Gordon, great book. Speaking of that, one book that's changed your perspective on business itself. Can't be The Energy Bus.
Oh, come on now.
Throwing
Come
you a
on.
curveball.
You are throwing me a curveball.
Can't be The Energy Bus. Tell us about the other books, unless that's the only book you've ever read.
No, it's not the only. There's a couple different salesman books that I've read, and I'm just trying to think of the one that's popping in my head.
Who's it by?
John
Maxwell.
Of
course.
Yes.
He's the best.
He is the best.
All right, last question.
So how many books have you read from John Maxwell? Quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few.
Yeah.
We'll get into that. All right.
Okay.
Last question. Walk us through Bill's perfect day, start to finish. You can say, tomorrow, I'm going to map out the perfect day. Doesn't have to be work, whatever, like perfect day for Bill. What does that look like, start to finish?
Out of the bed at 5:45.
Specific too, not 5,
Yeah.
not 6, 5:45. You need that perfect amount.
Need
of
that
sleep,
perfect.
huh?
Yeah.
I feel
It's got to be right there, 5:45.
Yep.
And I know instantaneously when I'm up at 5:45 if I had a good night's sleep. And that's like this morning, woke up, felt great. I know I slept well. So after that, there's 20 minutes. It's that first cup of coffee. It's sitting in my chair looking outside. And today was watching the snow. And I'm a big fan of snow. So I get into that mellow zone, and then I go down to the basement and I work out for about 40 minutes on average.
Okay.
And get a sweat in, and then go upstairs, have breakfast, then I'm out the door.
Out the door. That's the
Out the
perfect day. Not
That's
on a
the
ski
perfect day.
mountain.
What's that?
It's a perfect day. Not on the ski mountain.
Oh, well, that's a whole different side.
Different type of perfect day.
Yeah.
All right, Bill. You survived the first 5 questions. Give it up for everybody. He made it. He's been real nervous about this. Absolutely crushed it. Absolutely crushed it. Bill, I want to talk real quick about Upstate Wealth Consulting, because I think we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't. So
Okay.
let's talk about that, and then let's talk about what we're doing here. Okay. Just tell us about Bill, your working career, Upstate Wealth Consulting. Tell us all that, and then we'll tie into what we want to talk about here.
Great. Blessed. Grateful. August 2000, started as a financial advisor with another
Do you wanna know
firm.
how old I was in August of 2000?
So lucky that it was a very, very tough start in this career. And building a financial advisor type practice takes relationship, takes time. And there was a lot of that. It's not, this isn't a sprint. It's an actual marathon. And when I sit here 25 years later, Upstate Wealth Consulting came about 5 years ago. And since that time, we've moved from Seneca Turnpike to here at the network. And this room is part of the network, and really excited to have you here and sharing in that.
Mhm.
So, I think of the career of being a financial advisor, and it's just gotten to a point where it's people that have been with me are doing extremely well and trusting me with a lot of things when it comes to money. And that's the bottom line, is helping people make really good decisions with their
Mhm.
money.
Yeah. I want to touch
So,
on something. You said sprint instead of a marathon. What does that mean?
no, it's actually the inverse, that it's,
Or the other way around.
yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
right.
So it's just like wanting success to happen quick
Mhm.
and realizing that it's not like that. And the definition of success has changed many a times when it's, the number of clients that are acquired, the amount of money that's earned. And it now is the sweet spot.
Mhm.
And I'm blessed to once again have that combination of career's doing well and I feel good.
Mhm.
And I'm glad you asked that question about what the perfect day is, because I know when I'm in the zone.
Mhm.
So
That's great. On the drive in, I was listening to a podcast, actually. This would sound like I'm making the story up for the podcast, but I'm not.
okay.
And it just talked about consistency and people that are wired like us. We've gotten to know each other well, and so I'm confident in saying that. Business owners, achievers, wanting more, can it's just being consistent. But to your point of the marathon versus the sprint, you always want that sprint, right? And I think it's the balance of saying you got to be consistent, you got to put the work in every day, and that juggle of getting hard on yourself of I'm not where I think I should be.
Yep.
I need to be further. Talk to us about, at this far along in your career, those moments through your career from 2000 to where we are now in 2024 and what that's looked like.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is just not hitting the revenue goals, and just revenue drives the team.
Mhm.
And a big
Drives any
part,
business, sure.
yeah, and it's just a big part of this is just hiring the right people. And, kind of going through the 25 years is when you get that really good core group of people. I have to be successful in order for them to be here.
Yeah.
And that idea of the slow go gradual growth, they buy in
Mhm.
as well as I see it.
Yeah.
All
right, let's get into the fun stuff.
Oh, sure, buddy.
Here we are.
Here we are.
This is, I don't even know what camera to look at. Okay? We've got all these cameras set up. It's fantastic. It's probably been a year since we talked about this, maybe close to.
Yep.
I want to talk about two things. I want to talk about the network, and then I want to talk about what we're doing here and what that is. But for those of you who don't know, we're on 600 French Road. Is it building B? Is it building 2? What is it?
The South building.
The South building. Okay.
Yep.
So grab your compass and then just go to the South building.
Pretty much.
So we're 600 French Road, New Hartford, New York, and the South building. It is a passion project that you and Matt Wilson have put on together. It's an incredible space. I don't want to say any more because I want you to tell us all about it. So talk to the listener and the viewer that has never been here. They haven't seen anything on Facebook, all your pictures, nothing. What's the space? What was the vision behind it? What's the vision going forward? What's it going on now? And then we'll get into what we're doing right now.
It was to build a community and to have a space unlike anything in the Utica area. Matt and I we had it on the calendar. Once we established where we were going to move here at 600 French, we had, engineer help. We had a designer that was instrumental in putting this together, but we wanted to have wanted to have light, and that involves a lot of glass, meeting rooms. So it's, we have this idea of it's all shared conference space, but there's 4 tenants that are within. And the idea here is that, referrals have gotten me to where I am here today, 25 years later. So these are businesses in these walls that I want to see do better and grow with us.
Yeah.
So that's really been the mission behind the network at 600 French.
Yeah. So who do we have in here right now? We might as well talk about those just while we're
we'll start with Matt at MPW.
Okay.
Yep. CS Arch is another business that's in here, and then Empower Business Solutions that's in here.
Okay. So take us through the project. You're not an architect. You're not a designer.
Yeah.
You're just a good-looking financial.
I don't know.
Guy, right?
You got half of that right.
No, but what I love about this is like the vision. Like it takes someone like you and Matt to see the vision, right? But the office was not set up. Anybody and we'll put some photos in the episodes or whatever so you can see. And go to, what is it? Network at 600 on Facebook.
Yep.
It was just studs. right? I mean, you guys
Correct.
literally built this up from the ground, not physically built together from the ground, but the vision, you did the whole thing. Tell us about that. What was that process like? What'd you learn? What didn't you expect?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of having to, pivot on what
Mm,
we thought. It was Linda Alioso is our interior designer, and she did a phenomenal job of actually walking through the space. And you nailed it, Steven. It's like people that have the vision. I mean, I love to just throw out ideas, and Matt can tell you I'm the big idea guy, and then I get myself in trouble.
mhm.
I'm just like, okay, we got to figure this out now.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was fun to have other people to kind of keep us in check, and having to pivot a couple different times on the design itself. But it was 1980s across the board in here. There was nothing.
Right, right.
So everything came down.
And how important, I don't want to go around too much, but I think this is important because we talk about our businesses. You're 24 years into your business.
Soon to be
Not to
25.
remind you that.
Yeah, let's not do the math.
I just turned 24 years old. No, just kidding. But like, you're 24 years into your business. I'm 2.5 years into my business, right? But that pivoting, you talk about that. But I think the more important thing I want to touch on with this project specific is how important it has been to have the team of people, right? And like, you have the designer, you had the furniture team, you had the construction people, like all of that to get it done. What was it like creating all of that?
It was like watching a dream being built. It
Mhm.
was surreal at times, especially when we had our open house, and just the amount of people that were just walked in here, and they're just like, wow, this is, I saw a couple photos, but this is not what we expected.
Mhm.
And I see it with the other, within the UWC team, there's 11 of us, and there's 4 established advisors, and some of our veteran, they've been at this for over almost 50 years, and they're talking to their clients and showing with pride what's going on here. So that's the fun part, is dreaming it, having the vision, and then watching it all come together, and doing it on top of this with a friend. And Matt and I, we met through what I do, and being a financial advisor. These are just people, and you're a prime example. We're in BNI together. That
Mhm.
never would have happened if I wasn't a practicing financial advisor. So
Mhm.
I am, again, just as much fun as you and I have. We like to bust chops, and it's
We do?
great.
No.
Yeah, it feels like I've known you for 30 years. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow, it's been 2.
about 10 minutes before we started this, I had to give Bill a compliment. It hurt a little bit, but I just made the thing when I have to give Bill a compliment is I have to preface it by like, hey, I'm going to say something nice, just so you know. And
You
then
do that
say
a lot.
it,
Yeah, yeah.
and then just follow up with breaking chops. But that's all about relationship building, and I think that's a key of what you're trying to do here, right?
Yeah,
And I think that's the
everything.
different feel. I've been lucky and thankful for you including me on the certain events you've had here and getting to know the people and all of that. And I think of like every time I walk through the door, there's always a welcoming face. There's always would you like, you got the beautiful kitchen bar area. Would you like something to drink? What is that vision for the future of the space? What's the long-term, like in your mind, when you think about what this is going to be in like 5-10 years, what's that look like?
A big part of this room that we're in right here at the network with the pod, or I mean the network at the podcast network, or the network at pod, whatever we come up with as
Sure.
a tagline here, is like there's going to be more of this. And I think taking the step, and this was a big step, the next step, there's a part 2 of this, and I'll be excited if you actually invite me on again, and we'll go through like,
Yeah.
what does this part 2 look like in detail. And I'd really like to have Matt and I kind of walk you through, like, there's going to be a splash,
Mhm.
and this was just the tiptoe to make sure that this is going to work. But it's because of the people. That's
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
Everything in my life is because of the people.
Okay, so I'm gonna dive deeper into that, Bill.
Okay.
So what does that mean for Bill? When you looked at the vision and said like, hey, this is something I want to do, right? Makes sense to build the community, makes sense for your business, makes sense for the other businesses here. I'm going deeper.
Okay.
What does it mean for you?
That I can, which will happen in 2 years, where I'm out west in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, skiing 30 to 40 days to 60. All 60 days I'm out there, and this enterprise operates without me. And whether it's UWC or the network, they're going to be connected in a way. So that's allows me to just do the things I love. And that's
Sure.
when my energy is the best, when I go away and come back.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you're the same way, Steven. If you get too deep into things, you overthink,
Yeah.
you don't sleep well, you're not getting up at 5:45.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't eat well, not hitting NOLAs, then there's just all these things, these little things have a
Yeah.
huge impact.
Because it gets to a point where it's wax and repeat, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking of this, we're kind of going all over the place, but I'm perfectly fine with it because I love this conversation. It gets, if you don't take that time, right? When whatever cup you don't fill, the other one's just going to constantly be overfill,
Correct.
right? I mean, does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect, like you said, I love to ski like that. I want to go out there and do that 30, 40 days, whatever it is like that. Like that's my goal. And these are the things that are going to be able to feed it. And this is how I'm going to work hard to do it and all of that. I love that. Tell us a little bit more about Bill, and then we're going to talk specifically about the pod and what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. I think that grateful, like when I believe something, I can make it happen.
Yeah.
And I hope that, just you being part of my life here for the last couple of years, kind of directing back to you, is like this room is a dream.
Yeah.
And having you involved here with us at the network and including you on some of these things, like what helps fill me up is when other people are successful. Like I don't.
Can I tell you a story on that?
Yeah, please.
Last night, I don't want to give like too specific details. There's no like HIPAA laws in any of this, but let me just think how it is. Last night I was at an event, let's say that.
Oh.
A close friend of mine had recently left their job because they were being treated unfairly.
Okay.
And it's interesting. I think back to all the episodes and all the guests that we've had so far on the podcast, all the theme goes back to unintentionally betting on yourself. And I feel a lot of my stories around that personally with what I did with T5 and betting on yourself, and you with this, you bet on yourself. You took a financial risk. You took a lot of mental and emotional risk out of yourself to make this network happen, right?
Yep.
And I'm getting back to my story, but I was at a event.
Okay.
This individual that just left their job, they've been looking for other jobs. Fantastic person in the marketing world. Great. They were being treated unfairly and they left their job. And I'm like, good for you. When you know your worth, right, that's good. But they're looking for other opportunities that were at this event. Okay. Now I set the table. I was trying to figure out how to do that without all the details. I was able to make a very strong connection with someone that will most likely end up in a potential great job for that individual. And all of that was just because of simple relationships.
Yeah.
One of them actually from BNI that we're very familiar with.
Cool.
I was driving home last night with such pride of just grinning ear to ear that potentially a simple introduction that I was able to make could potentially change that person's life. I'm not trying to be dramatic, but you never know where a career goes or, for the next steps. And I love that you say that. And I get off my high horse here for a second because I was just telling that story and forgot exactly what you said in regards to that. But being able to make the connections to make an impact, right? That's what it goes back to.
Connector.
Yeah. Connector. And I tell people all the time with the podcast, like in the podcast world and networking, like I just want to be the connector of people.
That's it.
And I love the fact that people will be like, hey, do you know an electrician?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I'm just an insurance agent. But like, yeah, actually I know two. Here they are, call them, right? And that helps that person or whatever. And like, that's what BNI is. That's what relationship is building. That's what you do very well at and what I inspire to do. And what you're trying to do here when you bring people in, when you have people come through those doors and all of that, I think it's so powerful, not only for business, for personal relationships and all of that. So I just wanted to share a story on that. And now I completely forgot where you were taking us before I interrupted us, but that's okay. So we're here at Network.
Okay.
We're at the Network in 600 French and we're in the podcast room.
Yeah.
This is so cool, everybody. I have to tell you why this is so cool because I would say a little over a year ago, maybe Matt Wilson and Bill Matteson, who was sitting in front of us, of course, in his lovely blue sweater that we matched, said, hey, let's get together for some breakfast. We want to talk to you about this concept before the network was even a thing and this and that. And I remember us talking about this and I remember saying, don't overlook the what the podcast room could do.
You did say that.
From just like I've done countless podcasts. So I have an insurance podcast. We just hit 100 episodes, which is a huge milestone.
Congrats.
Yeah, it's so much fun. But it's for specific insurance agency owners. 5 with T5 is, as we're recording this right now, about 31 episodes.
Okay.
Right now, in the last 15 minutes, this has been the best energy just from being here, right? And it's different I walked through the doors. I came in. The guys were helping us get stuff set up.
Yep.
We sit down. We're talking face to face. Like that's the power of relationship making, right? And like although the Zooms and everything that we had to deal with and COVID and the way that I've done the podcast up until now, the remote thing is easy for people. They can log into their office. That's all great. Convenience is great, but this is different.
Okay.
You know?
Feel that?
Yeah.
Feel that?
No, I feel it.
Yeah.
I'm being honest with you, not because you're sitting here and I'm in a room alone with you or anything. But I think it's because I can really, like when I just said Bill, I want to dive deeper about Bill. I could, and then get that out of you about how you're dreaming.
I can feel you're looking at me. I can see it. Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, I got to dive.
And if you don't answer, the lasers are going to come right out. And,
That's right.
But it's different. So I can talk from our standpoint of our conversations, but I want you to specifically talk a little bit more about the dream and the vision for the podcast room itself right here.
Yeah. And that's where
and let me actually,
because you and Matt know this world.
I'm going to interrupt you one more time.
Sure.
Because you came to me initially and said, we're doing this project. We're thinking of doing a podcast room. You have a podcast. Let's have breakfast and just talk about it.
Yeah.
And what happened at breakfast? I was just because I love the conversation. I love podcasting. I love relationship building. But you have said from the beginning, I have no idea what I'm doing.
No idea.
No idea. I just love the
lights.
concept.
Totally.
What is that? Like without knowing it, without having a podcast yourself, without being on other podcasts and stuff like that, like what is it that gets you so excited about this?
Well, I see your guest on the podcast. I'm in an environment, a weekly meeting environment, and seeing you, and I watch the buzz that happens. You're like, oh, I was on Steven's show, and like that. I know if we have a really comfortable space and we get really creative, like we can do this in other areas.
Yeah.
And we can have one in the Rome market. We can have this one in the Utica market. And I just want to make this room the best in this area. And I think you're the primary ingredient to making this thing work. And that's what I saw. I saw a hustle.
Clip that up, everybody. Clip that up for a short social clip.
I saw a 20-something who is not afraid to get out there and you put the work in. And I'm like, I just want to be around people that put the work in. And Matt and I, that's our attribute, is we're built the same way. We just want to be around people that work.
Yeah.
And you're a worker.
And so for time's sakes here, because we can go all night long, and my wife's expecting me for dinner, I believe. No, I'm just kidding. Probably not. But I want to end with this about what I love about podcasting and the opportunity. And I first want to thank you. I want to thank Matt Wilson and Jeff Storm, who have been a huge part of putting us here together to make this happen.
Completely.
That's number one.
Completely.
Like I'm tickled pink. I tried in my mind real quick to use a different term, but that's all I can come up with. I'm just tickled pink by this. It's so cool to sit here and do this because we talked about it. Like you said, we talked about it, we discussed it, we planned it, and we did it.
Yeah.
Here's what I love about podcasting. Every single person has a story.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm going to go back real quick to the insurance podcast that we do.
Okay.
And then there's, all these little insurance agency owner Facebook groups and all these things and all these groups. And like someone will come out and be like, oh, I'm doing a podcast on blank insurance, whatever. And, some people are, oh, that's all we need is another podcast in this world and this and that. My view is with podcasting, you can never have too many because everybody has a story and everybody's story is willing to be heard, right? It should be heard, I should say, right?
Yep.
But I think that the interesting thing when you talk about having a guest on, like you said in those weekly meetings when people say like, hey, like that's their week.
Mm-hmm.
That's their spotlight.
Yep.
And then you can get them in here. You can get them on Zoom, however you do your podcast. And you can get into the Bill Matteson that wants to talk about how his dream is to be skiing 30 to 45 days a year, right? And you can dive into that and you can tell their story. And I think going back to the insurance one, because we've had 100 episodes and more experience on that one specifically, but like we look at like all these big insurance coaches or the big names in our world, and they're all great episodes.
Okay.
The real good episode is just the average Joe that has a kick-ass story.
Do you have a couple that stick out?
Oh,
without
yeah.
a doubt.
Oh,
okay.
I would say his name, not that he's probably going to watch this, but I would say his name if I remembered it. There was an agency owner that we had on. And so we have a scratch agency podcast. It's just about scratch agents. Yep. And there was an agency owner that we had on, and it took us 2 attempts to get him on because he didn't think he had anything worthy to talk about. And me and the co-host say it was the best episode we've had because it was actionable steps of somebody doing what we're doing. And my point is, again, I'll get off my second high horse here, of there's all these podcasts out there. There's everybody has a story, and all it takes in my mind is one person to hear something that changes something they do in their life, changes something they do in their work, and it's a success.
Like that.
You know,
Like
in the
Stu.
Scratch Agency podcast we've got like 215 subscribers on YouTube. We've got a community of like 50 people, like modest numbers, nothing crazy at all, right? But there are several people that have said, this podcast has completely changed the way that I operate my business. This podcast has completely changed the way that and I think if you look at any type of podcast and relate it to anybody's story, that could change one person, that's worth it.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Love it.
Yeah. I just like, I could talk about this all day because the podcasting thing, like everybody, you just get somebody talking, you get somebody in a seat. And I know we didn't dive too much into you because we wanted to talk about the podcast, and
I appreciate
he's real nervous and stuff. But we want to talk about the podcast and what we're doing here. But like, we talked about you for like 5 minutes and we got something out, right?
Yeah.
And I think like, what a great way to spotlight community champions, business owners, and all around amazing individuals. You know, and so again, I just have to say, I forgot.
Is it gonna hurt you again? You got to preface it.
I got to preface it. I'm gonna say something nice about Bill. There's my preface. I am so grateful and thankful to have the opportunity to be here and do this project with you and just be a little bit a part of it, whatever that might be. You know, and I think the coolest part is there's really no plan too, right?
No.
We're just doing this. You're like, hey, next Friday at 4:00, we're just going to dry run it. Sound good? I'm like, I'll be there. Here I am with my little piece of paper. Let's rock and roll.
Well, see, but I do have a quick question for you. Is it easiest when it's just from the heart? Does that feel like when you and I are just showing up here, we're doing this, like, does that just...
Yeah. And so I have notes on my intro and my extro because I want to make sure those are relative and the same, and my questions to remind you. Okay. Besides that, I don't like doing the notes and doing any of that because you never know where the conversation will take you. And I know there's different people like to do things different ways, but when you script things like that, it just doesn't seem like, well, Bill, tell me about your childhood. Yeah. Tell me about your college days, Bill. Tell me what you learned in high school. Tell me what you tell your younger self. Like, those are all great conversations and questions, but it's not truly just a conversation if you're just going through the motions.
Great.
You know, versus, hold on a second, Bill.
You said something. Let's dive into that. Yeah.
Right. And if I look back at that podcast, again, going back to the insurance podcast we have, which I think is the #1 episode, the guy didn't even think he wanted to be on. We had to beg him to be on.
Was he nervous?
Oh, he was. I don't know if he was nervous. He just didn't think
there was content. Okay.
He just didn't think he was worthy of being like interviewed on a podcast. And I'm like, hey, we're just documenting. Here's the other coolest thing. And then I'll wrap us up. This podcast is going to be out there forever.
Yeah.
You know, I've got a kid on the way in 3.5 months. 20 years, they can listen back and say, I want that Bill Matteson. I want to listen to when Daddy talked to that Bill Matteson. But that'll be out there, and it's just documenting people's journey, documenting people's life. Like, how cool to have a podcast and have a new business owner on, and then in 5 years later have them on. How's your business going?
Are you out? And
you know,
do you do in your 30 or 45 days of skiing? How's it going?
Right. Yeah.
2 years later.
About that,
you told us 2 years later. Yeah.
And also, I think it gives a thing of being vulnerable to share those stories. But at the end of the day, we've got these beautiful cameras here that the MPW crew has helped us with, and these beautiful lights. But at the end of the day, it's just two guys with beautiful blue sweaters having a conversation.
Completely.
You know, and we didn't plan the blue sweaters.
I got a red one. Let's wear red next time.
I don't have a red one. That's going to cost me. I might have to borrow yours. Bill, let's wrap this up. Do you have anything else to add?
No, just love the friendship. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you guys again. I need to give again. I don't know what cameras. When I said we're just winging this, they got it all set up and sat us down. I think you're Bill there, whatever. We're over there. Matt, Jeff, and Bill, and everybody at the network, I'm so thankful to be here to be able to do this and kind of kick this off. And I'm so excited of the conversations. It's kind of cool to say, like, what kind of conversations will happen in this room?
Exactly.
You know,
what were the walls?
You know, what were the walls here? Everybody, that's a wrap of today's episode of 5 with T5. Thanks for joining us. And in this engaging conversation, I'm going to stop myself quick because I want Bill just to tell us a little bit more about the network. Where are we? If people want to check it out on Facebook, all of that, get in touch with you about the opportunities to do stuff here. Okay. Pitch that real quick.
I don't know if I can because we don't really have their website. So there we
Perfect. Go. Coming soon on part 2. All right, Bill, let's wrap this up. Everybody, that's another episode of 5 with T5. Thanks for joining us. Do us a favor. Like our YouTube channel and Facebook page at T5 Insurance is where you can find all these episodes. We release them every Wednesday at noon. Remember, until next time, the power of connection and learning from one another is what makes our community thrive. But most importantly, remember to make an impact in someone's life today, even if that's your own. Stephen Turmo with T5 Insurance. We'll see you next week. Take care.